Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's track guide for the iRO4 at Hockenheim GP. Let's go see it. Before we get started, let's look at the track conditions. We have a 34 degrees Celsius track with moderate usage. These are going to vary from session to session throughout the week, so just note that these conditions do affect our lap times. Let's also take a look at those lap times. So we did a full fuel stint before coming back in, adding some more fuel, and then doing our laps on pretty old, but also pretty up to temperature tires. So keep that in mind that the age of the tire and the temperature of the tire also are going to affect our lap time. Lap time here, though, isn't the most important thing. The most important thing that we're looking at is actually the concepts for each corner that we're trying to use. Our lap time that we are looking at right now is going to be a 38.988. In turn one, our first goal is to actually mount this blue and white entry curbing. It's going to open up the corner for turn one, and it's also going to help us out a little bit with rotation as we come off the curbing. Our first marker is going to be this 50. As we're getting to the 50, we want to start turning in and then give a slight dab of brakes. That dab of brakes is going to get our nose set into the corner, so that we'll get a nice rotation as we come off this exit curbing, and then we'll be able to just coast into the corner until we know we're going to hit the apex. As we coast in the corner, we're going to stare at this blue and white curbing. Our goal is to put our right tires on the blue and white curbing while avoiding the sausage curbing, which will upset the car. And as we get to the apex, we want to be full throttle to get a really, really nice exit. This is a very high-speed corner. We're not downshifting at all. We're staying in fifth the entire time. So it's really just about carrying as much speed through here as you can without running wide at the apex. Without running wide at the exit. On the exit, this is about as much exit that you can take. If you go pretty much anywhere beyond this, you're going to get a 1x. So this is right on the limit. Essentially, my goal is to still have the left side tires ever so slightly touching this blue and white curbing or just at the edge of it. Oh, we've gone too far. At turn two, our marker is this access road. So just as we're getting to this access road, we're going to start applying brakes pretty heavily. And then our goal for this corner is to set up for a very nice exit. So we want to brake and go down from sixth gear to third gear, and then at the apex be very aggressively on throttle, just kind of like we were at turn one. With the difference being that we really want to make sure the car is slowed down enough to be set to get a nice steady exit and a nice smooth exit. We don't want to scrub the tires too much on exit or have to lift here. So as we're approaching the apex, again, we want to hit this blue and white curbing while avoiding the sausage curbing. On this particular lap, we actually do miss the blue and white curbing, but it doesn't hurt us so much because we are able to get back to full throttle at our typical apex. We're just off it by a little bit. So we do run a little bit wider than we want, and we have to cut back a little bit harder. But on the whole, it doesn't affect our lap too much. The main thing here is that we were able to aggressively get back to full throttle to give us a good run all the way down this straight. The other minor thing to note about this exit onto the straight is that you don't need to use the exit curbing because this car doesn't have enough power for us to be required to go out there. Essentially, we have enough downforce, we have enough grip that we're not getting tire scrub by cutting the corner a little bit more tightly like this. And we're actually shortening our run through this corner, which is helpful in the long run. The other thing of note is mid-kink, mid-corner. Technically, this is a straight, I guess. Is that we want to stay as tight as possible to cut out the run as much as we can. Before we talk about this corner, let's also point out that this is the main overtaking and defending point. So this line is really only going to apply to a clean lap. Once you start getting into side-by-side battles here, your main thing is not killing the other person. But our marker here is the end of this green access road on the left-hand side. We're going to start braking there and pretty aggressively going all the way down to first gear at the apex. And then the other goal is that we don't want to turn in too early. And we also don't want to turn in too late. If we turn in too early, we're not going to be able to get to throttle as soon as possible. And if we turn in too late, we're going to be able to get to full throttle very, very quickly. But we're also going to lose out on a lot of time getting to the apex. And I don't really think that you can make that up on exit if you go too deep. So we're starting to turn in, just angling in for the corner as we're going down the gears and slowly trailing off the brakes. And then really we commit to the corner here. And then we're kind of slowly going to get back on throttle as we know we're going to hit the blue and white curbing. And now our eyes and our attention should actually go to this exit. We want to avoid running wide on this exit because there's also a 1x there. So our goal here is to use the blue and white curbing without touching that sausage curbing, which can pull us out into the 1x. So we're pretty aggressively back on throttle at this point. We know we're safely within the bounds of the corner, so we can just run that out. At this kink, the only real thing of note is just using all of the blue and white curbing. And staying far to the right, as far to the right as we can, because we're really setting up for this left-hander up here. At the end of this blue and white curbing that we've just passed, I'll back it up just a little bit, this curbing, we're going to start to brake, and we want to go all the way down to third gear. And essentially our goal is pretty much the same as we've seen in these higher speed or medium speed corners. So for turn 1 and turn 2, all of the blue curbing, none of the sausage curbing, and throttle at the apex for a good exit. Boom. So back to full throttle. We also don't want to run out too wide here. Using the blue curb out there tends to suck your car out further. You'll get a 1x, and it makes it really, really hard to fight back to the left, as we're going to see we need to. So I come back to the left as far as I can before needing to commit to the next corner. There is a little bit of elevation here, a very, very slight amount. So getting turned into the corner a little bit earlier, in my experience, is key. If you turn in a little bit too late, you're going to push wide. And then I like to use all of the blue and white curbing and maybe a touch of the green curbing, but not too much of it to unsettle the car. If you use too much of it, when you get back on the blue and white curbing, it'll kick you out wide. And then on the exit, I like to avoid this sausage curbing again because it seems like it'll pull your car over to the left, and it's very, very easy to bottom out on. This corner is a little tricky. I don't have a reference point on the left-hand side of the track, but if I were to, it'd probably be this pole on the left-hand side. One of these poles is probably a good reference point for you to start turning in. We want to start turning in under full throttle to set the tires in the direction we want them to go before doing a pretty dramatic and quick lift off the throttle to, again, move the weight of the car forward to help finish our rotation before we can get back on throttle pretty aggressively. For this corner, for me, my eyes are always looking at the apex, and so I always am kind of looking at the edge of this concrete wall. And then as we're turning in, I start to look for the green. And as soon as I see that green, that's where I know I want to aim my tires. I want my right-hand side tires to use all of that green at the apex and get back on throttle very, very quickly there. So as we start to see that green and we're turned in, we do a quick lift off the throttle to set the rotation. You can see we have to do some slight counter steer because we actually got more rotation than we needed. But then we set the hands again and back to full throttle pretty aggressively as we mount all of this curbing. On the exit, it's the same deal. We use all of the exit curbing, including all of this green runoff. As long as you're within the bounds of this green, you don't get a 1x. The other thing of note is that you don't want to rest the edge of your outside tires on the edge of this blue and white curbing. If you do, it's very easy to lose the car. So you really want to commit to those outside tires, making it all the way onto the green so you have a good contact patch. From this point, our goal is to really get the car as aggressively back to the right-hand side of the track as possible to get a good entry into Sachs curve. Approaching Sachs, the beginning of this blue and white curbing is roughly our braking point. Our eyes are there, so we're getting on brakes a little bit before that. But again, we're going to brake pretty aggressively going down. And then our next thing is, as we trail off, we want to really get into the camber of this corner, which is on the inside. It's kind of like a mini carousel. So the more inside you get on that camber without then getting on the blue curbing, the more the corner is going to help you get around it. So you'll see that as we come off the brakes and get into that camber, we actually release the brakes completely and let the corner help us carry speed through. If you start getting too inside, then the car is going to level out because this inside curbing will lift the left-hand side of the car, and you don't get all the benefits of this camber. So we really want to try to avoid the blue and white curbing as much as we can. But as we ride this out, our goal now is to look at the exit and to make sure that we can make the exit. And as soon as we think we can make the exit, again, we can get aggressively back on throttle, which we're going to see here. And then our goal for exit is to place the car with the right-hand side tires roughly in the middle of this green curbing. If you use any more of the green curbing, the car is going to bottom out because the green curbing bows away from the track, and it's very, very easy to end up in the grass and not be able to make this left-hand kink. At the left-hand kink, we want to use all of this green curbing to set us up to get as close to the edge of the left-hand side of the track up here as possible. And luckily, the car doesn't bottom out there, so it's easy to do. And then for here, as soon as our car starts to become parallel with the left-hand side of the track, we're going to kind of treat this as we treated a couple of different corners. Start getting turned in, a dab of brakes, let the car coast in, and then as soon as we're ready to get to the apex, we can start getting back on throttle. So very, very similar to turn one. Now that we're at this entry curbing and we've gotten the apex, our goal is to start looking at the exit curbing. We want to avoid running into the sausage curbing out there, which will actually pull our car out onto the drag strip. We'll get a 1X, we'll bottom out. It'll be really hard to make the final corner. So our goal now is getting back on throttle at a place we know we can make the corner by using all of the blue and white curbing while avoiding the sausage curbing on the outside. You can see we're just starting to get on throttle here. And yep, we use just the blue and white curbing and nothing more. And then we're still turning into the corner for the green curbing. And we used a little bit or as much of the green curbing as we possibly can without having to lift the throttle or change our trajectory too much. We don't want to fight the car here. We want to reduce scrubbing and move through this as smoothly as possible. And then same thing on the exit. Use as much of the exit curbing as we possibly can without fighting the car for a good run down the main straight. And that's our lap. All right, so with our lap and our track guide in the bag, let's go ahead and look at the laps in cockpit view in full speed and then chase view in full speed. if you did find this track guide useful, please make sure to like and subscribe. Also, please feel free to leave any comments for feedback or suggestions below. This is our first of hopefully many track guides for the FIA F4. I do plan on doing them every single week as long as we have enough people interested in them. So hopefully this is helpful. Hopefully this is something that we can continue to do. I do also stream every week on Twitch at twitch.tv/elgatoconlapiba. I will leave a link in the description below. I think that's how this works. But yeah, until then, make sure to enjoy your races. Good luck this week, and hopefully see you soon.